Well, hello there. I'm back. I haven't done a video for a long time, and this idea has been kind of floating around in my head for a while. So today I made it happen. So what I've done, it's a reversible cover for a glass jar that you might just have kicking around. I did one side in Christmas fabric, and I did the other side in a nice kind of a springtime print. So I'm going to show you how I came up with this, and how so you could make your own. It's not a long drawn out project. It took me longer to figure out the thread color combination for the serger than it did for me to actually make this thing. So the first thing you need to do is find a glass jar that you want to work with and a measuring tape, and you're going to measure from the top of the jar around the bottom of the jar and back up to the top of the jar. And my jar measures 16 inches. And I'm not being very good about staying in my camera range here. So 16 inches is my jar all the way around from top to bottom, back to the top. I'd like to have about a 1 inch overlap here for the ruffle. So that's 1 inch on each side, so I have to add 2 inches to my 16 in order to make this thing, and it's just a perfect circle. So to make a pattern, I've got a piece of paper. I'm going to fold it in half and then in half the other way, so I'm folding it in quarters. Make sure that it's neat, not messy, no wrinkles, and make sure that one fold is right on top of the other fold. And then I'm going to tape it in place in a couple of spots on my work table. Here's where is the center of my piece of paper, so I'm putting a piece of tape across it so that I can just barely see a little piece of the paper peeking out, and I'm putting another piece at the opposite corner. Now I need a circle that's 18 inches. I'm going to make my own compass for this, and I have to make a circle because I folded it in half, a half of the 18 inches, so I have to make a 9 inch. So I've poked a hole at one spot here, and I'm going to measure from the hole. I'm going to measure 9 inches. And then I'm going to make another hole at the 9 inch mark. Right here. And I'm going to poke my awl through that hole too, so that the pen will show through. Now I'm putting my awl back in the original hole, and I'm sticking it as far as I can into my cutting mat here on this corner. I'm holding it with one hand. Oops, thought I was. It slipped. Try that again. And then I'm going to put my pen through this other hole, and I'm going to draw a quarter of a circle. Now I can remove the awl, and I found that the easiest way for me to cut this was to use my rotary cutter. And I just went slowly. I kept my finger out of the way. It starts to pucker a little bit, so lift your rotary cutter periodically and put it back down again. And there is my circle pattern, 18 inches. So now I've chosen my two fabrics, and I've put them with the wrong sides together. Making sure that none of it is missing on the bottom layer. Move this down. There's a bit of selvage going on up at the top here, so I'm just trying to avoid the selvage. Using my hands to make sure that everything is smooth, no ripples. I'm unfolding my piece of paper, and I'm going to pin it. I'm going to suggest about 6 pins for something this size. Make sure that you've got both layers of fabric. And yep, we're good at the bottom. Move it up just a little bit. We're good here. And a few more pins. Then I'm going to cut it out. And then I'm going to take it to the serger. Now on my serger, I've selected a 3-thread, narrow 3-thread overcast or overlock stitch. I've shortened my stitch length to 1, and I'll talk about that again in a minute. And I've balanced the tension so the top and the bottom threads lay perfectly flat. You can see it on both sides, and you'll get a better look at this when I move to another camera. So I'm going to cut this out, and then I'll meet you back at the serger. So now I'm at the serger. You can see my settings a little bit here. My differential is set for normal. I've shortened my stitch length down to 1 for this 3-thread overlock. It's a narrow 3-thread, so I have my right needle in, my left needle's been removed. I did have to change my tensions. I reduced them quite a bit. My upper loop retention normally is 1.1, so I tightened it up to 1.3, and my lower loop retention is usually usually 1.7, and I tightened it up to 2.2. So at this point now, I have my circle cut out, and it's pinned. It's both with wrong sides together. Still, the pattern piece is still on, and now I'm taking my pattern piece off and then reinserting the pins right away so that my fabrics don't shift. And as you do that, it's probably wiser to do it somewhere where you won't stick the pin through your finger like I just did. So I tried a number of different combinations of threads and different colors, and I found that it looked the best if all 3 colors or all 3 threads were the same color. And so it's important that you choose thread colors that go with both layers of your fabric. I ended up with a kind of a goldy beige and quite like the look of it. So I'm going to put my pattern piece away and raise my presser foot. Oh, it's already up. And now I'm going to put my fabric in under the presser foot of the serger. I'm putting it in so that the edge of the fabric is right along the edge of the knife. And my foot control is not behaving itself. Oh, yeah. So I'm like right under the table here, which is kind of fun. All right, back up for air. All right, back under the serger. And we're going to begin. So fabric is under, presser foot is down, and I'm going to serge all the way around the outer edge. And this is quite a big edge, so I'm going to pause my recording. So I paused it, went almost all the way around, and now I'm almost back at the beginning again. So here are my thread tails. I'm going to cut them off completely, so that it's a really clean beginning. No threads, nothing hanging out. Okay, so I'm going to serge until I get near that spot. And then I'm going to pay close attention, and I'm serging right over top, and I'm going to take a few stitches so that it overlaps. Now I'm putting my presser foot up. I'm pulling my fabric off to the left, and I'm turning my hand wheel so that there's some thread, and then I'm serging off with my presser foot up. And this gives me some loose threads at the beginning or the end. You can see it here that I'll put some fray check on and then cut them off close. And as you can see, my beginning and ending are just about invisible, like you can't really tell where one started and where one ended. So there's the front side of it, and there's the back side of it. So the stitching is really nice on both sides. Our next step now is to go to the sewing machine, and I'll take you there in a minute. We're going to sew 1 inch in from the outside edge all the way around, and then we're going to sew another half an inch in from that all the way around. So we'll see you at the sewing machine. So now I'm at the sewing machine. So while I was on my way over here, I stopped at the iron and gave it a bit of a press so that if there were any bits of roller coasters hanging around that I could press them out. So I've got two different colors of thread in my machine. I have a green on the top because I found that it blended in quite nicely with the fabric color, and I have an off-white in the bobbin because it blends off nicely there. So I want to sew 1 inch away from the edge. I do have a mark on my throat plate, but I thought I'd put a piece of green tape here so that you could see where I was aiming. So now it's just a straight stitch, and I'm going all the way around. And I know you don't want to see me do this, so I'm going to pause and I'll meet you back here. So I'm almost back at the beginning again. I have cut my thread ends on both the top and on the bottom. Except I didn't do a very good job on the bottom, so I'm just going to come back and clip that again. And then I'm going to continue sewing until I get back to where I started. And I'm going to overlap by a few stitches. And I'll take a few stitches in reverse just to make sure that it's strong. And then I'm going to cut my thread. Now I'd like to sew about a half an inch or so, a generous half inch, in from where I sewed. So the easiest way for me to do that on my machine is to move my needle over to the left of my presser foot. And then I'm just going to use the edge of my presser foot and sew all the way around again. My thread was caught in the bottom there. And then going all the way around, and it'll end up with the 2 rows of sewing, making a casing where my elastic is going to go. So I'm going to pause and I'll be back in a sec or 2. So when I'm back, it's now time to put the elastic in. So if I hold this up to the camera, you should be able to see my 2 lines of sewing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my little snips. I don't even know where I left them. Oh, right here in front of my eyes. And I'm going to make a little hole on either one side or the other side of the fabric. I'm choosing this print because it's a little busier. And I'm poking, actually I think it'd be wise to use my stitch ripper for this because it's got a nice fine point on it. Let's just see, put it in. You don't want to go through, you don't want to cut both layers, but you want to cut about 1/4 of an inch hole, which I've just done through this one layer. So now I've got a good quality 1/4 inch wide elastic, and I'm going to thread one end of it on a bodkin. And I'm going to put the bodkin, I can find the hole back again. There it is. I'm going to put the bodkin in the casing and work my way around. As well, bear with me while I do this, it doesn't take that long. It only takes a long time if the elastic comes out of the bodkin and you have to do it twice. And that happens sometimes. I'm almost back to the beginning. Oh, I'm not, I'm about halfway. I'm getting there. There we are. I am back at the beginning. My bodkin is now peeking out. Oh shoot! Well, now I'm going to pause the video because now I get to do it again. Be right back. There, tried that again, and this time I didn't lose it. So now I have both ends peeking out. So this is where I start, or I ended. So my short end is right here. So I'm working that short end into the casing without losing it. So the easiest way to prevent it from popping back out again is to stick a pin through the end of it, and that way it won't get back inside that hole. So what I want to do is because I don't want to waste elastic, I've got my edge here, and I'm going to the sewing machine, and I'm actually going to sew back and forth across this spot right here, and then I'll be back. So I've sewn back and forth across that short end, and now I can trim that short end off, leaving a generous 1/8 of an inch, more like almost 1/4 of an inch there of the elastic. You can see my short end there. Now I'm going to pull on the other end until I get a nice tight gather that's going to hold on to this jar. So I'm going to put the jar inside and work away on this elastic, evening the gathers out. And it's going to hold quite nicely. An extra little tug for good measure. Now I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew back and forth across this other end of the elastic, but I'm not going to cut it until after I sew. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've sewn across the other side of the elastic, so now I can cut it. Again, about 1/4 of an inch. And this just kind of disappears in there and you can barely see it. Once you work the gathers around so they're even, I haven't done the fray check yet on my loose ends here, but I will. Now it's just a matter of putting it over your jar and arranging the gathers. So that little hole that we made, you'll never find it back again. There we go. We have a matching pair. 1, 2. Merry Christmas, Merry Spring, whatever season you're trying to celebrate. You make great gifts, and if you've lost the lid to a jar, you want to use the jar or pass it on as a gift, it looks quite nice. Can you imagine that with some spring flowers in it? Thank you so much.